Good morning, everyone. My name is Barney Johnson. I'm a classical composer, and I'm reaching you here from Savannahs, but it is unfortunately my last full day here. I am moving back to Paris just because I need work, and unfortunately, though I love the region, there is no work that I can find in the region. I need also access to more public transportation as well as a vibrant cultural life, so I'm going back to Paris. Today we're going to talk about my first opera, Atala. Just to clarify, I have two operas. I have Libretto, which is my second opera, in which I'm creating a whole story from scratch. But today we're talking about my first opera, Atala. So Atala is a short story by Chateaubriand, who is a French author who lived at like a very interesting time from like the end of the monarchy into the revolution and afterwards. So, and he even like fled France at one point and went to London because he was allied with the aristocracy, and he visited America, what we now call America, and he talked about the Native Americans, and he has some really, really beautiful writing and stories. And so I will be setting Atala. So in this video series, I'm going to just give you the whole story of Atala, and then throughout the year I will be giving more videos talking about how I'm making cuts, what kind of changes I'm going to be making, all in the interest of the larger artistic vision. It is a beautiful story, but it was not written for the theatrical realm. It was written to be read, right? So that means there's certain things that will need to be changed. And so I'll be talking about that. Today, in this video, right here, right now, we're gonna focus on the prologue. Okay, there are many operas that have prologues. I'm thinking of, for example, Boris Godunov by Mussorgsky has a prologue, fantastic prologue, of course, ends of the coronation scene, one of the greatest moments in operatic history, maybe not. Then there's also Rameau, who is one of my favorite composers, operatic composers, has lots of prologues. I think Peter Grimes or Benjamin Britten has a prologue. Prologues are great because it's kind of like the tension isn't really high. It's just to give you as a setting. It gives the audience time to get into the drama, and then the real drama starts. So in this short novel, there is a prologue. There is no real dialogue that takes place, but I would like to keep certain elements from the prologue, which I find super beautiful. And first and foremost, that's the descriptions. So unfortunately, I will have to, I'm speaking in English, so the beauty in French will be lost, but I will do my best to make it as beautiful as possible. So first of all, he talks about, this takes place a lot around the Mississippi River in the beginning. He's really talking Mississippi River in the south, okay? And he's talking about the left, the west side and the east side, okay? And he talks about the vegetation and the greenery. And I'll read it first in French just for my own help. So, sur le bord occidental, les savannes se déroulent à perte de vue. Le flot de verdure, en s'éloignant, semble monter dans l'azur du ciel où le s'évanouissent. So basically what that translates to, in reference to the vegetation, he says, on the western side of the river, there are savannas that stretch beyond view. And there are streams of green stretching even further, seem to access the heights of the skies, of the blue azure skies, where they disappeared. So it's, and this is a rough translation, but I'm trying to convey this sense of like stretched kind of nature, which I really love. There's a lot of that. Sorry, let me just keep track on time here. And then also, I love the descriptions of the animals. He says, des ours entourés de raisins qui chancent sur les branches des ormeaux, des caribous se baignent dans un lac, des écureuils noirs se jouent dans la l'épaisseur des feuillages. What it translates to is the bears intoxicated by raisins, bouncing from branch to branch by the snails, caribous bathing in the lake. Black squirrels playing in the thickness of the leaves. So again, you have this view like of a different America that hasn't been fully conquered, and just like just unending nature, just like unending, like pure, untouched nature. I don't know how, certainly I can't have the characters singing about this. It doesn't advance the storyline, but I think I want the I would really much like to convey it in the music. Here's where the music can play a very central role and just conveying the sense of like just undying beauty, just like stretched beauty, unfathomable beauty even, I would say. The other element I want to talk about in the prologue is kind of the context that he sets up for the story. So what's really beautiful about the prologue, it kind of like takes us from the top as if we're like in outer space, and we're like gradually getting closer and closer and closer to Earth. And so it's like first is like these large, big like shapes, and it gives us more and more detail, and finally we center in on the characters. Definitely in the opera that will be lost. That's not central to the story, but I think it's quite beautiful the way he does that. And so he first talks about the land where Chateaubriand, who will be the main character, comes from. He comes from a tribe, the Natchez tribe, an Indian nation, and Chateaubriand explains that the French had an alliance with this tribe. And what's very interesting is like nowadays we see people in these fixed groups like black, white, Native American, but that's really, first of all, it's a lie to begin with, but second of all, if we look back in history, it wasn't so neat and clean. So there are a lot of Native American tribes that were in rivalry with each other, and they formed alliances with different European settlers, which is another reason why you should read literature. Yes, the beauty of it, but also you really learn history when you read literature, and it sticks more because you experience it. Then in the prologue, of course, Chateaubriand is French, so he has to relate it back to France, and he talks about Chateaubriand and his relationship to France. One quick note: the Natchez tribe, I believe, is it's based around the Mississippi, so it's like either in Florida or what we now call Mississippi, Louisiana. That's like the area that kind of this whole story takes place. I have to double check, but it's that area. So in this prologue, Chateaubriand is an old man, or what we would consider old man at this point in history. So he's in his 60s or 70s. It's considered sort of old back then. It's in the 18th century. Okay, and Chateaubriand says that Chateaubriand was, as a kid or as a young man, taken to the docks of Marseille in south of France by a cruel injustice, which we would assume to be like he was captured for slavery. And then he was brought to freedom, and he was presented to Louis XIV. So he met the King of France. And then they go on to say that Chateaubriand, this Native American man from the Natchez tribe, he went on presumably to learn French, because he says he met with the great leaders of the century. He spoke with the great writers and the great thinkers. And he even went to festivals and parties in Versailles. Hey, why not? And he saw the tragedies of Racine. Super jealous, because I really want to see Racine. I love Racine. And they go on to say that at this moment in the story, Chateaubriand is now blind, okay? And that despite a number of injustices that Chateaubriand witnessed or suffered by the French, he still had a love for the French people. And what I love about the French and living in France is you see that not all Europeans are the same, and the French had a very different view in terms of colonization and how they interact with the native people. And so for Chateaubriand, it seemed very normal that a Native American could be brought to France and be integrated into French culture and participate in French culture and be treated as an equal. Okay, and I think that's such a beautiful vision, regardless of how things played out in history. Just the vision for me is what's important, and the vision is astoundingly beautiful. And again, I love how Chateaubriand, that he's writing in the 70s. He's writing. This was published in like 1804, 3, around there. But he acknowledges the suffering and some of the evil that the French did while they were abroad. But he shows an aspect of forgiveness, because Chateaubriand still has a love for the French people and the culture, which I think is a very responsible way to kind of like look back on history. But again, the focus of the opera is not colonization, so I don't want to please don't hijack my opera with this discussion, but I think it shows something very beautiful about the French mentality that I have come to fall in love with. And then finally, in the prologue, they say that in 1725, so Chactas is an old man, a young French boy, maybe not a boy, but like, 18, 19, 17, named René leaves France looking for adventure, and he comes and he meets Chactas in what we now call America, and Chactas adopts him as a son, takes him in, and even gives him a wife. And then René asks about his story, his love story. And again, it shows for a French, the fact that Chactas gave this French man, a Native American wife from the Natchez tribe. I'm assuming she's from the same tribe as Chactas. For a French author, it seemed logical, to just unite two cultures. They didn't have this so-called purity of, this group can't be with this group. It would just seem totally logical for Chateaubriand that they would intermarry. And again, it shows something so compassionate and beautiful in the French thinking that I want to explore, but perhaps not quite in this opera, okay? And so then René, 16, 17-year-old boy, asks his new adopted father, can you tell me the story of your youth? And then sure, he says. And then that's what starts the opera, or it starts the story. I hope that this was illuminating for you and that you enjoy this. My goal is to spend all of the 2022-2023 academic year working on this opera. So right now I'm just kind of like studying it a lot. It's in French, so I have to get my dictionary out. And then hopefully by mid-December 2022, I want to start writing the libretto, and I want the libretto finished by the end of August 2023. So I have about, 9 months to write the libretto. And from there, I would like to hopefully get interest in various opera companies and find someone to sponsor the opera. And hopefully within a year we can have some kind of date set and I can start writing the music. Opera is incredibly expensive to put on. It's a lot of work. It's beautiful because it unites so many different groups of people, and some people will unite, but it is very expensive. So I will need funding in order to start writing the music. I will have more videos continuing with the story, so do look out for that. Barney Johnson, classical composer. Have a wonderful day.